So I was gonna write notes for this video, but then I decided to just wing it. To Pimp A Butterfly is everyone's favorite rap album, apparently. I mean, everyone seems to love this thing. Lots of people commented on my 10 out of 10 video saying that they found this album to be a 10 out of 10. And up until a couple weeks ago, I didn't really listen to it. I listened to it once about a year and a half ago, and I just wasn't fully in it, you know, mentally, I feel like. But then a couple weeks ago, I decided to, you know, give it a listen. I've been getting more and more into the hip-hop genre recently, and I thought, well, this is such a huge staple of that genre, why not check it out? And there's a lot to unpack here. First off, the instrumentals are fantastic. Let's get that out of the way first. Instrumentally, this album is incredible. I don't really know a lot about like the West Coast hip-hop sound, but apparently this has kind of like a West Coast hip-hop feel, especially like it's a little bit more nostalgic for like the 90s West Coast hip-hop, I think. I actually don't know. I'm just kind of speaking out of my ass right now. But there's a lot of jazzier type influences in this album as well. Beautiful live instrumentation here. We got a couple samples, you know, there's like that Sufjan Stevens sample in Hood Politics. Love that sample. But it's combined really well with some live instrumentation, and honestly, all the production all over this thing is fucking incredible. You got like Flying Lotus producing tracks on here. That's the only name that really stands out to me. Pharrell Williams, the big hat Pharrell. That guy produced a track on here. You got Thundercat playing the bass, like all throughout this thing. These are just the names that I recognize, but apparently there's some big names in here. And it really is just a fantastic album, like instrumentally overall. I think the jazzier influences are incredible in this, especially in the song What's a Dollar Really Cost. Every single time I hear that riff come in, like the I put my stank face on every time I hear that. I'm like, ooh, damn, every single time. This album, honestly, in my opinion, plays out like a movie. Even just from the beginning, it feels like you're kind of jumping into this story. The way this album flows and like just everything about it just makes it feel like I'm like listening to a bigger form of art than just like an album, you know, because you can tell that Kendrick really put a lot of care and a lot of effort into just the flow of the album, at least, and that shows with the poem that he's reciting throughout the entire album. The poem that he's reciting kind of gets developed more and more throughout the album, and every single time you hear the poem, more gets added onto it, and it's kind of foreshadowing like kind of what's about to happen, you know. Obviously I can't do my usual thing where I go, oh yeah, I'm the musical guy. I like listening to music. I make music myself. I like the instrumentals. I don't pay attention to the lyrics. I can't do that, okay? That's the whole point of the rap genre, is that you have to pay attention to the lyrics, because these guys are telling some interesting stories. I'm excited to make this video because I feel like I haven't picked up on everything yet, and I feel like there's a lot more that I need to understand about this album. I probably heard it about 7 times or so far, maybe even more, and I've been reading the lyrics and stuff like that, really trying to develop a deeper understanding of what's going on here. I feel like there's still lots more for me to learn, so I'm excited to make this video because I'm excited for you guys to tell me about your opinions on this album and try to help me understand it even more. But from what I've gathered, this album is first of all, it's way more personal than I was expecting. I honestly don't know what I was expecting coming into this album. I was expecting it to honestly be more political. That's pretty much it. I was honestly expecting it to be more political than it actually was. I'm honestly glad that it was more personal. Kendrick's kind of telling these stories about how, you know, he grew up in Compton and he didn't have the best upbringing financially or just like at all in general, because like he was in Compton and he was gang affiliated, I think, and I don't think he was in a gang, but I think he was just like hung out with those types of people. He saw some shit, you know, and that's obviously, I think that's what he talks about a lot in Good Kid, Mad City, which I haven't listened to. I actually need to listen to. I'm actually excited to check out that album. So he talks about not having the best upbringing, and then like Good Kid, Mad City like really blew him up, and he became King Kendrick, you know. So everyone's loving on Kendrick, and he's like a really fucking famous rapper now, and now he's like rich and shit, I guess. This album kind of deals a lot with that struggle of like, you could take the kid out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the homie, you know? It's really interesting to hear his struggle with that. Like on tracks like You, where he really goes deep into these issues that he has with himself and how he has this like kind of self-hatred. He's influenced a lot of people, and a lot of people tell him that he's doing great things, but then he looks at like the people that are closer to him and he doesn't see the same reaction, or he doesn't feel like he's putting in the same amount of effort that he should be towards the people that are closer to him. And so this album kind of goes through this story of him kind of learning how to deal with money and the newfound fame and fake people and having this influence that he hasn't had before. Like in These Walls, which by the way, These Walls is great because he uses the metaphor of like, if these walls could talk. He uses that as a metaphor and he compares it to a bunch of different metaphorical walls that are happening. One of the things in that song that he talks about is how he's misusing his influence to, you know, get sex and stuff like that, and these vices. Throughout the entire album, there's these allusions to illusions. There's these things about God and like Lucifer and how he's kind of tempted by Lucifer. The whole track For Sale is basically Lucifer tempting him. And then there's also like all these like biblical references and stuff like that, like in the song How Much a Dollar Really Costs, which we'll get into that song deeper later. But yeah, I mean there's just a lot of deeper messages in this album about Kendrick and his life, kind of going from that rougher upbringing into what he is now. So lyrically, I think my two favorite songs are You and How Much a Dollar Really Costs. How Much a Dollar Really Costs is really great, not only because of that jazzier kind of vibe with those like just like that riff that makes me put on my stank bass, you know, but he's telling a really fantastic story in this song that kind of flips around at the end, where he's kind of telling the story about like how he's at this gas station. There's like a homeless guy that comes up to him and just trying to get him some money out of him and like saying just, hey, just give me like a couple dollars or something like that. Kendrick like does not give him the money, you know. The entire song, Kendrick is kind of like, I don't know why people ask for handouts and stuff like that. And then at the very end of the song, it kind of flips around and the homeless guy is like reciting his Bible verses onto him, and it ends up turning out to be like the guy was God. That like $10 cost Kendrick like a spot in heaven, basically. I'm not a religious person at all, but that song is very, it kind of hits. I feel like you don't need to be a religious person for that song to hit, you know, because it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, when you're someone at the stature of Kendrick, where like you have like the money, and like he like sets up the scene like at the very beginning where he pulls up to this gas station like in this luxury car, so it's like you have the money to give someone a couple dollars. It puts it into perspective of like, okay, if you have the money, then what's the point of not giving it away? Like, how much does that dollar really cost, you know? Yeah, bro. Nice analysis, Kyle. Probably my favorite song of all time, lyrically and musically, has to be Blacker the Berry. This track, dude, I don't even know how to unpack this track. First off, the instrumental's insane, dude. I absolutely love the instrumental. This song kind of deals with some deeper issues of not only racism in America, I feel like, but also black on black crime is kind of talked about here, where he talks about like the two African tribes that might go to war and how that kind of reminds him of the gang wars in like Compton and stuff like that. That's just a really interesting comparison. The entire song, every single verse, he starts off with saying like, I'm the biggest hypocrite of 2015, and it wraps up so beautifully by the end of the song. I think there's only really two songs on this album that I don't necessarily vibe with. It's All Right and I. Those are the two songs. I'd say these two songs kind of hold it back from being a 10 out of 10 for me, but honestly, I see why. Like they are pretty much needed in there, I feel like, for the experience. But those two songs, I don't know, something about them just, they don't make me feel good. I know that's the whole point of those songs, to make you feel good, but I don't know, they don't make me feel good, I'm gonna be honest. Hood Politics is cool too. I like Hood Politics a lot because, first off, the Sufjan Stevens sample is really great, but there's some interesting comparisons with like the gang violence in Compton and stuff like that, comparing it to politics itself. It's just an interesting comparison that I found. Complexion's also a great song, beautiful bass line in that song. There's honestly some stuff that I'm missing. I don't have like the track list in front of me right now because I'm honestly not prepared for this video. I also don't really get the Tupac thing. Maybe that's just because I haven't listened to Tupac. I honestly didn't know it was Tupac until I listened to the Genius, or until I read the Genius annotation. But yeah, there's like this like interview between Kendrick and Tupac at the end of the album. I honestly don't understand why it's there, but it kind of does tie it together, you know, especially when Kendrick reads like the poem at the end of the album. Not the full poem that he he's reading throughout the entire album itself. The poem that like he ends off the album with, that kind of ties the whole album together, basically explaining the idea behind To Pimp a Butterfly. Another thing too that is really cool is like watching him struggle with these ideas of like he's in this luxurious spot now, but he still has the mindset of Compton, and he's sorry, my fucking toe is itching. He still is in the hood mindset, you know, like Snoop Dogg said. I said this earlier in the video. You could take the boy out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the homie. I obviously cannot relate to any of that because I did not grow up in Compton, and I do not have as much money as Kendrick Lamar. But he really does a great job of explaining it, and like I think that's what makes this album so special, is that you don't need to have experienced what he's experienced and what he's experiencing to understand kind of what he's going through, because he explains it so well. I don't necessarily get the mall thing. I know the mall thing is like you can like the you can live inside of the mall. I don't necessarily get that, but I think that's a important message or something like that. It's supposed to be. So someone could explain the mall thing, that'd be great, because I feel like I already know so much about the album, but I feel like there's still so much more, and that's why I think people really enjoy it, is that this is an album that you could really dive deep into. And I'm honestly really glad that I did take the time to look through all the lyrics and stuff like that. Like I said, I really want you guys to go into the comment section and kind of give me your thoughts about the album and like all the metaphors and stuff like that. I read all the comments. I really do. I mean, like, I try to respond as many as I can. I don't respond to all of them, but I do read them all. So that dude that was getting mad at me for putting 98, 12, 28 in my 10 out of 10 video, even though I've only heard it like 3 times. It's fucking my video, dude. I can do whatever the fuck I want, okay? So don't tell me what to do, okay? Let me know your guys' thoughts on this album. I probably should have written notes for this video, but sue me, okay? What are you gonna do? Dislike the video? I can't see them.